Bullshit.
It's the No Bullshit Marketing Show, which is all about growth. I'm Dave Mastovich. Today we're doing part 3 of our series on why marketing hasn't worked or why marketing doesn't work. So we started out by looking at how people often say our marketing hasn't worked or our marketing isn't working or our marketing doesn't work. And that's really where the problem starts. But there are 3 key parts to this problem of why marketing doesn't work and why marketing hasn't worked. The first we call the internal team trap. And the internal team trap begins with that point about when people say marketing doesn't work or hasn't worked. What we found time and again, regardless of size of organization, with organizations 1 million in revenue, 5 million in revenue, up to 100 million in revenue, up to 5 billion in revenue, the whole spectrum and the size of your organization, we found that marketing success is rarely defined well. In many instances, it's not defined at all. Yes, there are many instances where the company says marketing isn't working, our marketing doesn't work, our marketing hasn't worked. And then you say, well, what does working look like? And if you're with a leadership team, the CEO says one thing, the CFO says another, the head of operations says another, the head of sales says another, and the head of marketing is like, now you see what I'm up against. So there's different definitions of marketing. And then sometimes in a more sophisticated organization, you might be watching and say, oh, we define marketing. Well, what often happens there is it's defined with more specificity. And maybe there's 1 or 2 people or 3 that share that same definition, but it's often defined in ways that don't tie it to revenue and don't tie it to overall growth. And it's defined in ways that are more tactically measured to try and make it more like an efficiency function. And you've heard me talk a lot about how marketing is an effectiveness function. So that's what starts and drives that first one, the internal team trap. And the internal team trap, we touched on another episode, but very quickly, a whole episode was focused to, but very quickly we'll touch on it, is the internal team trap is leaders are used to managing by efficiency, not by effectiveness. You then have this area called marketing that should not be considered a department. It is a system, it is a philosophy, and it is an effectiveness component of your organization. But we're used to managing as leaders and managers by efficiency. So now we take something that should be led and managed by effectiveness, and we manage it by efficiency. And then we hire a team, which are people that are going to hear what we want, and they're going to match up to what we said we want. And we said we want this specific tactical execution, and we want it managed in this efficiency way. So now you get people that kind of fit that, and then you throw more on them, and those people get in a situation where they have too much on their plate, and they're not able to be effective, and they're not even being managed for effectiveness and not even being managed tied to revenue growth. They're managed in these other ways. So that's the internal team trap. The second of the 3 reasons why marketing doesn't work or marketing hasn't worked is the external partner problem. We'll touch on that. There's a whole episode to this one. The external partner problem begins this way. That leader wants to succeed. There's no leader gets up and say, I think I'll go and fail today. That leader wants to succeed. They talk about how marketing hasn't worked. They get this marketing team of people that match what they tactically want to execute. And then we throw too much on them probably, and they're not led, they're more managed. We're managing them as a function or a department as opposed to a system and a philosophy and effectiveness area. And it's not going as well as we'd like. You're starting to wonder what's going on. Sometimes sales blames marketing, says, what's going on? We're not getting the leads we want. Marketing then says, sales doesn't know what they're doing. We gave them leads. And you get this vicious cycle. So the leader says, I got an idea. And it's the shiny object. The new shiny object is to get the external partner. And you get this external partner that you heard speak, or you saw something about them, or they do a specific piece of revenue growth or marketing or communications or storytelling. And you bring that external partner, and the external partner then comes in and they have a choice. And the vast majority of external partner choices will go about it with outputs rather than insights and inputs. And they jump into it with creative solutions, not necessarily based on behavioral science and not necessarily based on math. Or if they are, it's not on a lot of science and not on a lot of math. So now the external partner comes in and they're trying to give their definition. And this person's already saying, this is what I think the marketing should do. It's still not a clear definition of marketing. It's not real marketing in that it's not about driving revenue growth and driving recruitment, retention, and results internally and driving brand. It's maybe one of those 3 or 4 things instead of all of them. And the external partner then throws their efforts at it, and the internal team, they're in a trap already, and they're sometimes like the external partner, sometimes they don't, sometimes they feel threatened by them, sometimes they play the blame game. Either way, it takes tremendous amount of leadership and management to take this effectiveness area and not treat it like an efficiency function. So the second one is when the external partner problem happens. You have the internal team trap and the external partner problem. Those 2 things happen, and you try to work through solving them. We talked about how to address those and how to solve those in each of their own episodes. Now, the third part comes down to the leadership disconnect. And all of these, as you can tell, play off of each other in an adverse way. I've already mentioned some of the things that lead to the leadership disconnect. And here's what they are. Leadership sees marketing as a function or department. That is not really what you see finance is. You don't see the CFO as a department. You don't go, we're talking to the finance department today. Send that down to the finance department. You say, let's go talk to finance. Let's look at it. So it's just a subconscious thing where you're actually not calling these other major areas departments or functions. You're seeing them as the bigger thing that they are. But yet when it comes to marketing, it's lumped in as this function or department. The second thing is it's not clearly defined what success is, because many times people don't have a full understanding of what marketing success can be. So now you don't have a clear definition of marketing success, and you're looking at it as a department or a function. So you then delegate the leadership of it. You manage the function and activity of it, but you don't own the leadership. And that's the leadership disconnect, is when you look at it as a department as opposed to a system that connects strategy, connects storytelling, and connects that activation. You don't look at it as something that can drive culture, which drives recruiting, retention, and results productivity. You don't realize that it's also the external brand, and maybe that's what you do think of it as, but it's all this combination of those. So the internal team trap is one thing, the external partner problem is one thing, but now the leadership disconnect is when leaders don't see the opportunity to leverage storytelling to shape the understanding of what the company is and what it's about, to shape the culture and what your core values and core behaviors are, and to shape whether you can compound trust or erode trust through the leadership of the organization. So the leadership disconnect is when leaders aren't able to leverage all that and aren't quite understanding or seeing that. So now you're a listener and you're a leader and you're wondering, not so sure about this, Dave. I don't like what you're saying here. Or, whatever, I'm going to shut this off. Or, no, that's just not true. Here's what I found again and again and again and again and again and again, regardless of size of the organization. Leaders don't have a full understanding of marketing, and they haven't understood how marketing plays a significant role in culture development. And maybe they haven't been as intentional about culture as they need to be and as intentional about storytelling as they need to be. And what I mean by that is intentionality means that culture is a focus of every leader and manager in that company. And marketing is seen as something they're intentional about with the storytelling to all audiences again and again. It's not delegated. It's not a department. It's not Suzanne or Jim's taking care of the marketing. Pete or Harry and Rhonda, they're doing the storytelling. No, it is a part of the whole company. So when you go to build the culture, storytelling plays a significant role because you have to start with outputs, is what most people do. They start with outputs. And you don't. You want to start with inputs and insights. And what I mean by that is this story about culture needs to be both by and for employees. So you start with insights and inputs by going out and finding out what the employees think makes the place special, what makes them tick, what makes them stay, what makes them want to do a good job. And you can do some of that yourself with your leadership team, your management team, but you really don't want your boss asking those questions to an employee, a boss asking the question to an employee. So it's better to get some outside help to gather those insights, to gather those inputs from employees. So they hear that they were heard, they know that they were heard, and you come back and you're able to start hearing what they see as the essence of the company. And you combine that with what leadership wants the essence of the company to be, and you see where there's a disconnect, and you begin to map out those core values. If you already have your core values, let's test them. Let's stress test them and see if they need to be tweaked. Maybe there's some are right on, some are spot on. Some of your core values need a little tweaking. Some maybe go away. Maybe there's a couple of new ones. But now here's the key. The key is to go and build core behaviors with specific anecdotes or analogies that tie back to each core value. So if you have 5, 6, 7 core values, you're probably going to have 3, 4, 5 core behaviors to illustrate each of those core values. Now you've got the foundation. Then it becomes building the system to have employees tell the story about the core behaviors again and again, to have leaders tell the story about the core behaviors again and again that tie back to the core values. So it's a full cultural storytelling system that has the channels, multiple channels, not just staff meetings, not just employee email, not just texts, not just using the break rooms, not just all these other ways, not just video. It's all kinds of channels, repetition, all systematically done. People are owning the core value of the week with the core behaviors associated with that for that week and going through that for the whole year, rotating that and getting it through. And that is what drives growth. It drives revenue growth. It drives retention. It drives recruiting, and it drives productivity. So that's when marketing works, is when your storytelling is focused also on cultural storytelling, building the culture, growing the culture, conveying the culture again and again and again. That's what leaders do. They shape the understanding of what the company's all about. They shape the culture, and that shapes how they present that to current and potential employees and how they drive retention, recruitment, and results, because the communication of the culture helps with your overall productivity. So it's all about building your cultural storytelling system and helping to leverage that. And that gets the alignment that you need from leadership, so you don't have the leadership disconnect, which is today's episode and the third part of the 3 reasons why marketing doesn't work and hasn't worked for you and your organization. Thanks for listening. If you feel your culture or storytelling isn't where it needs to be, if you feel your marketing doesn't work, call me. We'll figure it out together. No bullshit, just growth.
Bullshit.